Quitting my job was the best thing that I could have ever done for my mental health. But if you're in the middle of making a big change like quitting your job, there's a high probability that you're feeling overwhelmed. And I get it, I've been there. We never want to make long-term decisions based off of what I call short-term emotions. But if you're finding yourself constantly complaining to your partner, being so anxious about getting up and going to work on a Monday morning, or worse, having physiological symptoms like headaches or stomach aches, something has to change. As scary as it sounds, I promise there is a way through, and we're going to figure it out in this video. I am going to share my own career path, questions that you can ask yourself if you're kind of on the edge, if you're teetering with the idea of whether or not it's time for you to quit your job, how you might be able to salvage the role at your current job to turn it into what you want it to be, or how you can actually decide to move on if that's the right decision for you. Hello and welcome back to Organized Chaos. My name is Regan, and I am so very, very happy that you are here. Y'all, this is my first episode back from being in Mallorca, and I am feeling refreshed. I'm feeling excited. If you have not taken a couple days off in the last, I don't know, however long, this is your call to action to go and take a couple days off. It does so much for the heart and the soul and the body, and you don't even need to go to a beach to do it. You can literally do it from the comfort of your own home, but take some time off. Take those vacation days. Those vacation days are meant to be taken. Please do not focus all of your time and energy around your job. All that is going to lead to is heartache and pain and burnout, and kind of put you in the position asking yourself the question of, is it time for me to quit my job? That's exactly what we're going to chat about today. So cozy up, get your notebooks, get your pens. We are going to chat about my own experience with quitting my job, because I've done that a handful of times, what it looks like to jump from one job to the other, what that can actually do for your career, especially as a woman in tech. So I worked in tech for about 8-9 years, and so many women in tech just stay in their job, meant to, because they don't know what's on the other side. It's really scary, right? When you don't know what could be. So you end up staying with something that's, quote, safe, even if it's not fueling you, even if it's not helping you, even if you know in your heart it's time to move on. If you're getting that steady paycheck, if you know how big of an ass your boss can be, or micromanager your boss can be, that still feels better than the unknown of what could potentially happen if you put yourself out there, especially if you're working at one of the big tech companies that offers a slew of perks. I know right now the job market isn't exactly what we want it to be. I know that we are not in the 2020 job market, but if you're sitting in a FAANG company right now, I can imagine you're kind of like, well, what happens if I can't go and join another FAANG? What happens if I can't find the same perks? What happens if I can't find the same exact job? And that is your brain talking. That is your monkey brain, your primal brain trying to keep you safe. We love a brain that tries to keep us safe. We appreciate a brain that tries to keep us safe, but it's not always the smartest brain. So as we go through this video, keep a very open mind. There's not just one company to work for. It's not just the company that you work for right now and nobody else. That being said, maybe it's not time for you to quit your job. Maybe it's a mindset thing. Maybe it's a thing of, hey, you're not in the right place in your own life. So make sure you keep an open mind while you're listening to this episode. And if you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe and you send me a message, you send me a comment after you finish listening, because I would love to hear your thoughts. And it helps me so much when you like and subscribe these episodes, because I know I'm doing something helpful that you all are going to take with you into the rest of your lives. And that is exactly why I'm here. So let's start with why I quit my own series of jobs. The advice that I received when I first went into my career was, you stick with one company, Regan. You don't move jobs. You don't change jobs. And I very much threw that advice out the window, and I definitely don't regret it. I am somebody who would love to have a portfolio career. I would love to be an entrepreneur like I am right now. I've had my corporate career life. Maybe I go back to a corporate career in the future, but I like to look at my career as something that I can mold and I can craft, and I am the CEO of my own career. And that mindset shift has been helpful, because I went into my life with this scarcity mindset. I went in thinking I have to work for a company. If I don't work for a company, I'm not going to be successful. Success only looks one way. And it wasn't until I actually quit this most recent role that I left to go out on my own that I really started to think and go, actually, no, the success can look a ton of different ways. And with that comes a lot of power. There comes a lot of self-confidence. There comes a ton of self-reliance that I hope every single one of you can achieve, because that is going to give you the negotiating power that you need when you go into roles. That is going to give you the resilience that you need to maybe go and look for a job. That will give you the self-confidence to advocate for yourself. If you haven't already listened to my episode on advocating for yourself, make sure you go back and listen to it. We talk all about how important it is to really speak your mind. Say what you want. You can get what you want as long as you communicate, but so many of us are afraid to actually speak up and speak out. I left hospitality school and very quickly joined a company that would give me a job. I was so focused on just get me into a role as quick as possible. I think I had applied to like 100 different roles, but going and joining that one role that I hadn't really thought about because I was so concerned with just finding a job meant that I was starting myself down this path of exhaustion, anxiety, and burnout. I was a chronic people pleaser. I was probably already burnt out by the time I actually went into my first corporate role, and it wasn't really in an area that I loved. It wasn't a company that I, Regan, as who I am, how I learn, how I'm creative, should have really joined in the first place. They were a great company, just not right for me. So then I moved to another role that got me closer to what I wanted to do. This was really focused on event management and project management. I loved that aspect. But again, I was so tied to my personality being wrapped around my role that I wasn't asking myself, is this the best place for me to be? What do I like and what do I not like? Now, don't be naive. There's always going to be things that you love or that maybe you don't love so much about an individual role, but it has to balance out. You have to have more things that you like versus the things that you don't like. And there are endless roles out there for you. Just because you started off in sales because someone said to you, you should move into sales, doesn't mean you need to end up there. Vice versa. Just because you started off in engineering doesn't mean you need to end up there. There are so many courses and tools and websites out there that can help you re-educate yourself and move in a different direction. I was kind of doing that, but I took the long way around. And that's okay. It can take as long as you need it to take, as long as you get there. So I left my first job. Then I stayed at my second job for about a year. Then I stayed at my third job for just under 2 years. But that was because I was moving to London. So I actually changed locations. So you can see, even in the amount of time that I was staying in different places, I was slowly getting it right. I was slowly understanding what I wanted in a role, what I was interested in, and what I was excited about, what I really wanted to do. When I quit my most recent role, I really took a cold, hard look at myself in the mirror. And I realized I was following a similar pattern to the one that I had followed in all of my previous roles. I was arguing with my partner quite often about the role itself. I was burnt out, so I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to go anywhere after work. I didn't want to go and fuel my own hobbies. I felt like all I could think about was work. Red flag. I had physiological symptoms. So not only did I have the burnout, I also had the stomach aches and the headaches. God, I had a constant headache 24/7. I was scared. I didn't know where I could actually move to because my brain was trying to protect me. It was saying, you have a steady paycheck right now. You have a role that you could grow in. Roles aren't all inherently bad. Companies aren't bad. People aren't bad. They just might not be the right fit for us at that moment in time. One of my favorite pieces of advice that I've ever received is, if you are not earning, learning, or growing in a role, maybe it's not the right role for you. But what I don't think that takes into account is the chapters of your life. Sometimes you just might need to be earning enough to get by, to allow yourself to go and fuel the other passions in your world, to allow yourself to go and get to know yourself, if that's what's important to you. Growth, that doesn't have to look the same for every single person. For some people, that can look like, I want to skyrocket on the corporate ladder. For other people, that can just look like, I want to get my hands in every single pocket. I want to understand what's happening on this team, in this team, in this team, and I want to learn and I want to absorb that knowledge. So you need to define for you, based off of your own chapter in your life, are you earning? Are you learning? Are you growing? What is important here for you? No one else can tell you that. But if you're sitting there and going, okay, Regan, I understand that. It all sounds good, but I just don't know if I'm in a point where I should quit my job. I'm not sure if I'm ready to actually leave. Ask yourself this series of questions. Are you getting the Sunday scaries? It's a very colloquial way to be like, how you feeling really? How are you when you sit in on meetings? Are you zoning out? Are you disassociating when you're having conversations with people who may trigger a part of you that you're not really even realizing is being triggered? Are you earning, learning, or growing? What chapter of your life are you in? Do you actually like what you do? How much are you complaining about work? How often are you thinking about work? Do you have the boundaries in place in your own life to really separate work from life? because the work's never going to stop. The work is always going to be there. People will never stop emailing you or asking you for things. It's my favorite line from 4,000 Weeks, which I talked about in last week's episode, actually, about the 8 books that I absolutely recommend that will transform your life, especially when it comes to mental health, self-love, confidence. 4,000 Weeks is one of those. If you haven't watched that episode, make sure you go back and watch it. If you want to continue on in this episode, I'll give you a really quick synopsis. 4,000 weeks is you only have 4,000 weeks, really, in a general lifespan. In developed countries, people live about 80 years. That equates to 4,000 weeks. That is such a small amount of time that you actually have on this earth. Why would you want to be spending it on anything except for what makes you truly, truly happy? The emails aren't going to stop. People aren't going to stop asking you for things. What you need to do is say, here's my boundary, because I know this is going to make me happier. This is going to let me show up as the person I deserve to show up as. This is going to let me respect myself so that I stop feeling resentful. So I stop feeling like I'm so annoyed every single Sunday night, and really help you understand if it's the right role for you or if it's time for you to move on. We live in a world of endless opportunities. There are so many different things that you can do in this world. What do you prioritize? Do you want to climb the corporate ladder? Do you hate wearing suits? Do you want more flexibility? Do you want a higher pay? Figuring out what you prioritize is going to help you immensely in figuring out what your non-negotiables are. What is something that you're like, I absolutely cannot live without this one thing in my life? If you're not a morning person and your company is making you come into the office every single morning at 8 a.m., sometimes I see these videos on TikTok of people like smirking about someone didn't want to come in at 8 o'clock in the morning and how dare they, and they wanted to take a workout class instead. And I sit back and I think to myself, the world is changing so fast that having that mentality, I think, is going to put you a couple steps behind, because it doesn't really matter what time you get your work done. What matters is that you're actually getting your work done. But maybe that's just important to some people and not everybody. Whatever it is for you, you need to make that decision on your own. Our non-negotiables should be what is built into any future career planning, negotiation. These are the things that are going to help us get closer to what we really want to do. The final question, which is very similar to one that I asked you earlier on in this list, but I'm going to ask you it again, is do you actually enjoy what you do? Like, first answer without thinking about it, just throw it out there. Do you like what you do? Yes or no? When you tell somebody what you do, are you proud of it? Are you excited about it? Here's an exercise for you. Sit down and write out a list of everything that you do in your job and split it into things that you love doing, things that you're like, I like doing it, and things that you go, if I never had to do this again, thank God I never would want to ever again. I can't touch that with a 10-foot pole. Split that out. And then look at the ratios. How many are in bucket A, bucket B, or bucket C? If everything is in the, oh my God, I can't believe I have to do this, I never ever want to do this again bucket, maybe it's time to start to think about, how can I shift the role around to create something that I'm actually excited about going to? Or should I move on somewhere else? If you're a manager, you are going to know that you don't want unhappy people on your team. Unhappy people on your team make it so that it's really difficult to grow, to expand, to be creative, to be excited. It affects team morale so much more than anyone really gives it credit for. So you owe it to yourself, to the company that you're working for, to your family members, to your partner, to your kids. You owe it to all of those people to really show up as the person that you want to be. It is not selfish to think to yourself, I really don't want to do this task at work, because maybe you're not vocalizing it right now, right? There are some tasks that we have to do that we don't really want to do, and we want to throw it off our plate, but we can't. I definitely run into that all the time. What you're doing is you're noticing, you're being curious, you're sitting there and going, what kind of role might fit my personality, who I am, and what I really like to do? One of my favorite Brene Brown quotes, and I was trying to find it as I was preparing for this episode, but I could not find it. If you can find it, please drop it in the comments, send me a DM about it, reading.olsey on TikTok and on Instagram. She was talking to her kids and she was trying to help them figure out what they wanted to go and study in university. It was either that or what they wanted to go and do as their first role. And so many of us go and take on a role without actually thinking about what their career path is going to look like, A, but B, whether or not they actually like it, what they like to do and what they don't like to do. Arguably, what you don't like to do is going to be more important. And so her suggestion was, go and try a ton. Go and test, go and throw spaghetti against a wall, see what sticks. Every time you say, that's not something I necessarily like to do, you're getting one step closer to figuring out what you do like to do. And so don't feel bad if you have to answer and say, actually, I really don't like the role that I'm in right now. Answering that way is actually something to be super proud of, because you have the self-awareness to know that you are not in the right space and that it might be time for you to slowly start making a change. So you've answered all those questions and you're sitting there and you're trying to make an objective decision about, is it time for me to actually quit my job, or should I stay and try to work it out? What we don't want to do is be a people pleaser here. I think it's so easy for a lot of us to get wrapped up in the loyalty idea, especially with a lot of tech companies sitting there and saying, we're a family. We're a family. We protect our family. We want you to be a part of the family. We have seen so many different rounds of layoffs that if you want to think about your coworkers, your colleagues as family members, that's fine. But think about them as family members outside of work. When you're inside of work, if something's not making sense for you, then you are allowed to make a change, because your CEO, if they're sitting there and looking at their profit and loss statement and they're realizing they're spending too much money on salaries, and you happen to be in a role that maybe they don't need to prioritize right now, or they're not prioritizing right now, I am going to guarantee that they're not going to sit and go, we're a family, I want to protect everyone, so I'm going to cut my own salary, or I'm going to cut everybody's salary. Instead, what they're going to do is cut your role. And it's not because you are a bad person. It's not because you've done something quote unquote wrong. So if we start to shift our mentality, that will be the key in making sure that we can stay as the CEO of our careers instead of letting someone else control our career for us. So here are the things that we're not going to do before we make an objective decision. We are not going to fall into the loyalty scheme. We are going to figure out what we don't like to do. On top of that, we are going to figure out, what are your non-negotiables? What do you prioritize? One of the final things that we are going to think about before we make a decision on whether or not the role is actually right for us, we are going to take a look inside ourselves and realize, is it the role or is it us? Sometimes we might think we hate a job. We actually have to take stock of how we're acting. If we are the ones contributing to our own anger, our own resentment, it's going to get more and more difficult as we move throughout our career. No one is going to magically set boundaries for you unless you have a great manager, which sometimes happens, but it's very rare. No one is going to magically sit there and be like, oh, you want to work overtime without getting paid? Okay, don't do that. You should sit back. You should go and pay attention to yourself. Sometimes we are so angry. Sometimes we are so upset at the people that we work with because they just keep pushing our boundaries, because they just keep pushing our buttons, because they keep just asking and asking and asking, but we actually haven't set those boundaries in place. Or we have set those boundaries, and then when the slightest little pushback came, we let those boundaries go. It's important for us to recognize that we have such a strong part to play in our own happiness. We really need to dig deep and work on our inner selves before we're able to go and truly be happy in the career that we're building, the role that we're building. That's why in the beginning of this video, I mentioned the idea of being the CEO of your own career. You are in charge. When you look at it that way, that you are a solopreneur working for somebody else in the current role that you're in, because you have the agency, you have the opportunity, you have the choice to stay in the role. And so when you look at it like that, your negotiations become easier, the roles that you choose become more interesting for you because you're not afraid of what might be taken away from you. Instead, you are open to the possibilities of what could potentially come. You're working, you're in the right chapter of your life, you're in the right role for the right chapter of your life. All those different puzzle pieces slowly start to come together. Phew, we've been through a ton in this video already. We have gone through how you might notice that maybe it's time for you to change roles, questions that you might want to ask yourself, what to start to pick up on, but then finally, how to really evaluate if you can change the role that you're in to something that you're actually going to be excited about, or if it's time for you to maybe move on. If your current job actually aligns with your career goals, there are a couple things that you could do. First being, talk about it. One of the biggest reasons that employees leave jobs is because they just haven't communicated. Because somewhere along the way, we've gotten into our head that we can't tell our employers when we're upset. Not that it'll make employers happy, right? Like, I know I've had hard conversations with people before about me being unhappy, but what's important is you put all your cards on the table. You tell them, I am unhappy and this is what would help me be happier in this role. Is that a growth opportunity? Is that a promotion? Is that flexible hours? What from the list of priorities and non-negotiables that you identified isn't existing in your current role, and how can you build it in? Having that conversation with your manager in a collaborative way, in a way that is possible for the company as well, because not everything is possible, that is going to build trust, show that you actually want to be here, but then also create opportunities for you that may have not existed otherwise. If you keep your head down, if you don't ask questions, if you don't talk, if you don't communicate, those opportunities for growth probably won't come to you. But if you sit there and you say, hey, something's got to change here. Here's how I'd like to see it change. You have to bring solutions to the table. It gives the opening to your manager to help you see that through. If you want to explore something other than growth opportunities, if you love the company that you're currently working in, but you're like, do I actually want to go and try something new? Do I need to have some experimentation? I'm not totally ready to leave my role. Two things you could do. One, you could go on an extended leave of sorts. Now, many times those you need to hit certain requirements for them, or you could just go and take a couple weeks of vacation. I think vacation is really, really helpful in just resetting your mind, resetting your brain, helping you separate yourself from work, creating those boundaries while you're gone, doing some reflection, and then coming back and giving yourself a clean slate to set all those new priorities in place. The second thing that you could do is ask about, different companies call them different things, a bungee, an internship, there's one other word I cannot think of right now. Is there an opportunity for you to go and do a short-term stint on another team? Or is there an opportunity for you to go and do a 20% project with another team? Companies often don't want to see you leave. Turnover costs a ton of money. It costs more money for them to onboard someone else, offboard you, retrain this person, bring this person onto the team, get them up to speed, than it would for you to just leave for a tiny bit of time and then come back refreshed and excited. All of that, though, starts with you being able to advocate for yourself and recognizing where you might have some of these people-pleasing, lack of boundary setting tactics. I know that is really hard to hear. I know no one likes to be told that maybe they're a people pleaser, but it is so much more pervasive than we think. So many more people are people pleasers, and we're just not willing to have those hard conversations because we're afraid of what someone else might think or what someone else might say. If you have the slight suspicion that you might be a people pleaser, make sure you go and watch my previous video on people pleasing. That will help you understand what to do about it, how to set boundaries moving forward, and how to outgrow or change or grow through some of those people-pleasing tactics that you may not have even known existed beforehand. The very last thing I will say is, if the role does not fit anymore, if you've decided, I have a manager who will not stop breathing down my back, will not stop micromanaging me. What's important to me is I have the freedom and the creative space to go and do the things that I want to do. I want to move faster. This company's moving too slowly. I want a smaller team. I want a larger team. So many different things can have trickled into that priority list of yours. But if you've made the decision that you are done, you just can't do it anymore, you need to start taking steps to move forward. Don't let your fear of what's going to happen next stop you from updating your LinkedIn, from starting to send your resume out, from having coffee chats with people. Send messages to people. Get used to pitching yourself again. Take interviews that, even if you're kind of like, this might not be the exact role that I want, take that interview, because what you need to start doing is practicing. Going into interviews is scary. Pitching yourself is scary. Telling people what you want and what you need is scary. But you know what helps? Advocating, taking those steps forward, practicing it, and getting used to it. One thing as a side note I would also practice is your leaving statement. If you have anxious tendencies like me, you might need to sit in front of a mirror and practice how you want to tell your boss that you're leaving, how you want to tell other people in the company your story of why you are leaving and that you are leaving. It can be as simple as, I've decided to leave and I'm going to this new company, bada bing, bada boom, that's it. Remember, when people leave, it really shakes the boat. It really shakes the company culture, the team culture. So you want to do your best to help keep that stable and help people understand that you're moving on because it's the best thing for you. Focus on you. It's the best thing for you. It's the best thing for your journey, because at the end of the day, your personality is not dictated by the work that you do. Remember, every year doesn't need to be constant. You don't need to do the same thing year in and year out. It can change slightly, it can change a lot, but it can change in the exact way that you need it to. You have the agency, you have the choice, and you are the CEO of your own career. So I welcome you to step into those shoes. If this video was helpful for you, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It helps me so much more than you ever know. Follow me on social media, regan.olsey. I'm posting new content every single day on TikTok and on Instagram, and I would love to see you join my communities there. But most importantly, please go out, find a role, find a job, find a path that brings you joy and light and fulfillment. That's all I want to see you do. This has been another episode of Organized Chaos. I'm Regan, and I will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.